The male Muto of this film is attracted to the much larger female one. There's a joke to be found in there somewhere, I just couldn't place it in the script. I've been postponing this one for a long time because I didn't want to do a retrospective of a franchise that was still ongoing. You know, a retrospective without anything to look at in retrospect. I'm still a bit reluctant of doing this because the future of the Monsterverse is still up in the air. There have been some talks about Adam Wingard returning for a new Kong movie, but so far nothing concrete has come from it. In any case, I'm moving on with this series because I'm already running out of content to cover. If there aren't any new flicks in the franchise, good for me, and if there are, well, let's call this the Monsterverse Phase 1 retrospective. What about that? 2014's Godzilla has one of the longest and most interesting development stories in the history of the franchise. It started its life in 2003 as a project headlined by the late Yoshimitsu Banno, director of Godzilla vs. Hedorah. Banno intended to make a 3D experience for IMAX theaters, a format which, in his mind, would be more attractive for American audiences who had previously reacted coldly to Toho's releases on the country. The project spent many years in development hell, partially because of the need for investment, as Toho only gave Banno the rights for the character without compromising on actually financing the film. It was this constant search for investors, preferably American ones, that probably attracted the attention of Legendary Pictures sometime around 2009. The production company then acquired itself the rights for Godzilla from Banno, who would be credited in their upcoming project as executive producer. In 2010, Legendary finally announced that a new Godzilla flick was in development. I remember this announcement from back in the day. It was 4 years before the damn movie came out. It felt like a lifetime of waiting. Even though he no longer helmed the project, Yoshimitsu Banno did leave his contribution to it, specifically in the way the final product approached the fight scenes between giant monsters. It was apparently Banno's idea to take a more documentarist approach to the action, only positioning the camera where a human being could possibly be. The result is an adventure certainly unique to the franchise, as it takes a much more distant point of view, sticking with the humans as chaos ensues around them. In this sense, Godzilla is the first of the franchise in a long time to feel like a disaster flick. This seems to stem a lot from the moment the movie got made. The early 2010s were the days of the dark and realistic blockbusters. This is what they thought people wanted to see, Godzilla as a natural disaster, something that echoed his first adventure instead of the later ones. This is what all the marketing campaign leading up to the movie wanted us to believe as well. Remember the trailer with the Halo jump? Oh boy. And the main trailer that ended with Godzilla screaming at us? Awesome, right? Remember any mention of the mutants in the trailer? Me neither. It wasn't exactly a secret Godzilla would fight other monsters in the movie, but they didn't even try to sell the flick as anything other than the titular character smashing stuff on his own. Combining this with the gloomy atmosphere of the trailers and posters, you'd be forgiven to believe this new film was a reimagining of the character's original appearance. But that was not the case, was it? Instead of a somber tale about humanity's hubris coming to bite them in the butt, the final script is much more reminiscent of a late Showa one, with the plot being kicked by the appearance of a couple of monsters capable of destroying the world, and then Godzilla just sorta appears to save the day. Rewatching the movie, I even found odd how the first thing Serizawa wants to discuss with what's his name is Godzilla, who hadn't been even mentioned until that point, rather than the Muto, which just killed the dude's father and is a very real and immediate threat. The film clearly struggles with its own identity, trying to juggle the demands of a gritty disaster flick with those of a light-hearted monster adventure. This is better demonstrated by the fact this film's exposition core and point of view core are not the same, as it's usually the case in this. Dr. Serizawa stays on his corner explaining stuff while Brody serves as our eyes on the field. One hypes us up for Godzilla while the other... turned his back on him and headed the other way. Audiences were more than certainly left confused with this whole ordeal, as they were sold one thing, promised another, and finally got a weird mixture of both. Cue complaints about Godzilla barely appearing in the film. Yes, we finally arrived on everyone's biggest point of complaint about the movie. There just isn't enough of the title character in it. That may seem petty in retrospective, but it was certainly enough to give the film a very bad rap in the short run, both with general audiences and, in particular, with fans of the character who didn't know what to do of the film's very gritty style that didn't work well to elevate a narrative that could essentially be boiled down to giant lizard beats giant insects. For what is worth, what is there of Godzilla action is pretty good. The approach taken by the filmmakers does help preserve the sense of awe of the monsters, which remain these incomprehensibly huge entities who tower over everyone and everything. The staging and blocking of the set pieces also help with this essential sense of scale, giving the whole thing a dimension the franchise had never seen so far. All of this is also valid to the downtimes of the movie, really. All very tense and moody, both in the lead up to the action and during the most dramatic sequences. And while I know most of you only say that because you like Bryan Cranston, I agree that they really shouldn't have got rid of his character so early on, as his presence not only would have solved the disconnection between the movie's two cores, but also turned the whole story into a much more interesting family drama. It's a shame Disney scared Gareth Edwards off of doing blockbuster films, because we could use more people with his kind of aesthetic sensibilities in the field. Alas, none of these qualities matter at the end of the day, as the movie's unfavorable word of mouth only damaged its box office. Yes, it was a success, but it did worse than it could, that's for sure. Especially when you consider the step decline in audience admissions in the days after the film's release, which certainly made the studio get cold feet with the sequel they had already greenlit. A sequel that would carry all the problems of this film and maximize them tenfold. But let's not do like Legendary and get ahead of ourselves, because before we could witness the return of Godzilla to the big screen, the studio would decide it wanted to jump on the Marvel bandwagon and build their own cinematic universe. Fortunately for them, they just happened to acquire another character who was the perfect match for Big G. The perfect match for him. I have a confession to make. I don't care about Bryan Cranston. I think he's an overrated actor.